Hey guys, tonight we're crawling into bed, but not your bed. Picture this. You're barefoot, your feet are raw from a day spent trudging behind a plow, and the icy dirt floor beneath you makes your teeth ache just thinking about it. There's a soft stink of damp wool and cabbage stew lingering in the thatched rafters. You push aside a curtain made from old linen sacks and glance at the pile of straw you're supposed to call a mattress. If you were hoping for a hot shower, fresh sheets, and Netflix, sorry, you're about 800 years too early. Chapter 1. You are a medieval peasant. And spoiler alert, you're not getting undressed before bed. You're not even considering it. Because if you do, your chances of freezing to death or catching a nasty lung infection just skyrocketed. That itchy, crusty tunic you've been sweating in all day. It's now your pajamas, your sleeping bag, and on rough nights, your only layer of hope. So before you get cozy tonight, take a sec to hit that like button and subscribe. But only if you genuinely vibe with this sleepy little corner of YouTube. I'd love to know where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Drop that in the comments below. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You tuck your cloak tighter and duck into the shadows of the 14th century. The inside of your cottage is just above freezing. The hearth has long since died down, and the smoky scent still clings to every beam and blanket. You're sleeping in your clothes tonight, and not for fun. It's not some rustic aesthetic or survival challenge. It's life. Remember that thing called insulation? Yeah, doesn't exist here. Your walls are made of wattle and daub, basically mud smeared over woven sticks, and your roof is thatch, which is a fancy way of saying damp straw that rats chew on. No fiberglass, no heated flooring, just the chill of English air, or French or German, or wherever your little peasant life is plodding along. If you were lucky, the hearth fire got banked properly, covered in ashes to smolder through the night. But most nights, it dies out hours before dawn. So the warmth fades, the wind slips through every crack, and you pull your cloak over your ears. Taking off your clothes is a luxury for warmer climates or wealthier households. For you, it's a gamble with frostbite. And don't even think about the floor. There's no mattress down here. Maybe you managed to gather a pile of straw or hay, more likely scratchy than soft, and laid a blanket on top. If you're one of the really lucky ones, that blanket's made of wool and hasn't been used to dry livestock. You lie on your side, knees curled, trying to preserve your body heat like a sleeping squirrel. The others, your siblings, your spouse, maybe even your aging parents, all huddle nearby. Everyone fully clothed. Everyone trying not to wake up with their teeth chattering so hard they knock together like dice in a wooden bowl. Historians still argue whether winter in medieval times was truly colder than today. Some say the Little Ice Age hadn't peaked yet, while others believe the weather was just marginally cooler, but felt worse due to drafty homes and zero insulation. Either way, your breath fogs in front of your face every time you exhale. You're not taking off a thing. Let's talk undergarments, or the lack thereof. Sure, nobles had linen chemises and soft nightshirts, maybe even a change of hose. But you've got one tunic. Maybe two, if your harvest was good and you traded a piglet. And that tunic is your everything. Removing it means exposing yourself to both cold and judgment. In a world without central heat, being fully clothed isn't slovenly, it's sensible. Here's the kicker. Getting warm isn't just about comfort. It's about survival. You catch a chill, you risk pneumonia. You get pneumonia, you probably don't survive the month. There are no antibiotics, no hot water bottles, and no doctors nearby. Just some leeches, a prayer, and the vague hope that your immune system wins the medieval lottery. And while you sleep, your rough woolen hood still on your head. You're careful not to move too much. Shifting might let in the cold. You pull your limbs tight to your core like a human knot. Your body's trying to preserve every last calorie. every degree of warmth it earned while you were by the fire earlier. The irony? Your clothes aren't even that warm. Coarse wool, homespun linen, sometimes stiff with grime or damp from yesterday's rain. It holds heat better than nothing, but it's not exactly high-tech performance wear. And you're not taking them off to dry either. Because drying rack here means hanging them on a chair near the fire and praying the embers don't leap out and eat them. One stray spark, and boom, you're both naked and in trouble. You might be wondering, couldn't they just wrap themselves in more blankets instead of sleeping dressed? Well, what blankets? The average peasant had maybe one rough woolen cover for the entire household. You might have a sheepskin if you're fortunate, or a canvas sack stitched with straw for insulation. But extra blankets? That's noble tier living. Here's a fun tidbit. Some wealthier peasants or town dwellers did develop clever hacks, like heating stones in the fire and placing them at the foot of the bed wrapped in cloth. But most nights, your only heat source is the warm body next to you. And so, the medieval peasant family becomes a bundle of human burritos, all wrapped in their day clothes, sleeping nose to nose like hibernating hedgehogs. And don't forget, the outdoors is always just one thin door away. Wind, snow, sleet, sometimes they creep right in. And if you're sleeping near the outer wall of your cottage, you might actually wake up with a dusting of frost on your tunic. So yeah, if you're daydreaming about medieval life, maybe skip past the fairy tale castles and think more about how it feels to wear crusty wool socks to bed. For the 30th night in a row. Still romanticizing the Middle Ages? Didn't think so. Chapter 2. You shift on the straw bedding, trying not to crunch too loudly in the quiet of the hut. Your back itches from the scratchy tunic, and your knees feel the pokes of barley stems through the sackcloth. You reach under the blanket, if you're lucky enough to have one, and it barely covers your chest, much less your toes. You sigh. Tonight, like every other night, you'll be sleeping in your clothes, not for modesty, not for fashion, but because, well, what else is there? Let's not pretend there's a plush feather duvet hanging in the corner, waiting to be unfurled. No thick comforter. No quilted blanket with floral embroidery passed down by Nana. You might have what's called a bed cover, but that term is generous. It's likely a heavy, single-layer wool piece that smells permanently of smoke, sweat, and maybe goat. You share it with everyone in the household. And if you're the youngest, good luck getting more than a corner. Bedding in the medieval world wasn't just limited, it was borderline non-existent for most peasants. A sack stuffed with straw or heather might serve as a mattress, sure, but over time, the contents would flatten into something as soft as a pile of old brooms. And that wool blanket, it might be so full of holes that the wind whistles through it like a flute. So, your only insulation, your last line of defense against the night, is the clothing you never take off. Historians still argue whether peasants actually owned separate sleeping clothes or just reused day garments. Some suggest that on rare occasions, festivals, weddings, holy days, peasants may have borrowed or made clean shifts for bedtime. But most evidence points to a single outfit, worn during the day, slept in at night, and washed only when it absolutely couldn't go another day. Now, imagine crawling into that bed. It's not in a private room. It's not even a room at all. You're on the floor, or on a low wooden platform if your family had carpentry skills or access to scrap wood. There's no sheet to tuck under. There's no pillow with a satin case. Maybe a folded-up tunic or animal skin, if you're lucky. Otherwise, your arm becomes your pillow and your tunic becomes your cocoon. And yet, despite all this, there's a strange kind of comfort in it. Not the kind you're used to, but a survivalist comfort. Your body heat mingles with those around you. The wool clings to your arms and legs. And though it's itchy, stiff, and full of yesterday's grime, it's better than bare skin exposed to the bitter air. You might ask, why not just make more blankets? Oh, you sweet, modern soul. You think wool grows on shelves. A single wool blanket takes hours to spin, weeks to weave, and if you're not a weaver yourself, it costs more than a season's wages. And flax for linen. It's even worse. Growing, harvesting, retting, spinning, weaving. It's basically medieval torture with extra steps. Besides, many peasants didn't have access to that much raw material. Sheep were valuable for their milk and meat, and their wool had to be spun carefully and efficiently. Blankets were reserved for the frail, the newborns, and maybe a single elder with aching joints. You, a healthy, if exhausted, worker, you get what's left. And it's not like you can pop over to ye old Walmart for a blanket sale. Trading was complex and seasonal. Most people didn't venture beyond a 5-mile radius their entire lives. So if your village didn't have a skilled weaver or a surplus of wool that year, tough luck. Patch the holes in your cloak, pull it tighter, and roll yourself up like a smoked sausage. Here's a quirky detail for you. In some regions, particularly in Northern Europe, peasants would sometimes layer hay between 2 large pieces of cloth and stitch them shut, like a proto-duvet. Did it help? Somewhat. Did it smell like a stable? Absolutely. But again, that was luxury tier ingenuity. More often, you'd find yourself doing what generations before you did, sleeping in your crusty tunic, curled like a cat beside the hearth, clutching whatever warmth you could steal from last night's stew fire. And even then, you're never quite warm. You half sleep, half shiver through the night. You wake up when someone coughs, when a rat scuttles across the beams above, or when a baby starts wailing. The blanket slipped off your shoulder, so you yank it back and pull your tunic tighter around your neck. Your clothes are part of the bedding now. They are the bedding. That layer of homespun wool isn't just what you worked in. It's what's keeping you alive. Some households tried to make things more comfortable, filling beds with moss or dried leaves instead of straw. But these were minor comforts in a life where cozy just meant not actively miserable. And forget cleanliness. That blanket has absorbed years of soot, sweat, and dirt. Your tunic probably hasn't been washed in months, if ever. There's no laundry day unless it's midsummer, and you have a river nearby. Even then, washing is a chore that requires beating your clothes with rocks or stomping them in a barrel of lye, and then hoping they dry before mold sets in. So, what's your move? Strip down and sleep half naked on a straw pallet in December. Or curl up fully clothed, tuck your hands under your armpits, and pretend your breath clouds are cozy. You already know the answer. And it's not like you're setting a trend. Even nobles, who had access to more luxurious fabrics and bedding, sometimes chose to sleep in partial dress, especially if they were traveling or in drafty stone keeps. The idea of changing into nightwear was largely confined to the upper classes and only became routine for common folk much, much later. So next time you tuck yourself in under a fleece blanket, thermostat set to a toasty 72 degrees, spare a thought for your peasant self, curled under a threadbare cloak, dreaming about a second tunic like it's the Holy Grail. Chapter 3. You blink awake before dawn. Not that you slept deeply. A rooster outside coughs into the cold air like it's trying to clear its non-existent sinuses. A baby's been fussing off and on for hours. The fire's gone completely out, and someone kicked you in their sleep. Probably your cousin. Again. You sit up, or at least try to. Your lower back cracks in protest, and your tunic, still damp near the hem, sticks a bit to your legs. You glance around in the dusky half-light of the cottage. There's no separate bedroom, no door to close, just the main room, the only room, unless you're rich or blessed. And smack in the middle of that room, a long, low table. And guess what you slept on? That table isn't just for meals. It's also the bed, and the workbench, and the sewing spot, and sometimes the birthing station. Multipurpose furniture. It's all the rage in 14th century peasant chic. You try to imagine a bedroom, and the idea is almost laughable. Privacy. Who has that? You're living in one shared space with your whole family, and maybe the chickens. That means sleeping is a group activity. Snoring, coughing, blanket stealing and all. So even if you wanted to get undressed for bed, where would you do it? Behind the goats. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants had any sleeping hierarchy in their homes, like if parents claimed the bed and everyone else got straw. Some records hint at seniority systems, others at complete chaos. But what's not debated? The idea of one person having a personal bed. That's just adorable. In wealthier peasant households, say, those that did well on their harvest, you might see a simple wooden frame with a straw mattress stuffed in a sack. If you're in the lowest class, it's just floorboards or cold earth and a few itchy rags. Either way, clothes stay on. And here's the kicker. Many of those beds doubled as tables. In small cottages, the bed table might be a wooden slab with folding legs. You eat dinner there at sunset, wipe it down with a rag that used to be a shirt, and then spread a cloth and lie down on it a few hours later. It's the original convertible furniture. Move over, IKEA. Some wealthier villagers built benches with lids that opened up for storage and closed flat for sleeping. Not cozy, but clever. And if you're a traveling peasant working as a laborer for harvest season, you might sleep on a hay cart, on the stable floor, or literally in a barn next to animals. Because animals gave off heat, and warmth is worth more than dignity. In fact, you start to rely on your animals, not just for eggs and milk, but for body heat. You've probably slept within arm's reach of a pig more than once. Their grunts become your lullaby. And if you're lucky enough to have a dog, it curls next to you like a living hot water bottle. You don't care if it smells. You smell too. Everyone smells. That's not even worth mentioning anymore. Fun tidbit. In parts of Ireland and rural Scotland, the bed was sometimes built into the wall. It was called a box bed, a cozy wooden nook you could crawl into and close a small door behind you. Think of it like a medieval bunk bed meets wardrobe. Except again, you're still clothed inside, because even in your wooden cocoon, the wind finds you. You might wonder about cleanliness. Baths? A rarity for peasants who washed only once or twice a year, sometimes less. Clothes were washed infrequently too, so wearing them day and night wasn't just about convenience, but also about preserving what little you had. Stripping off your tunic and lying in the dirt was less hygienic and less practical than leaving it on. Plus, there was always the chill. The damp air sneaked into the smallest cracks, and night was a constant battle against cold. And don't forget the children. You're probably sharing whatever sleeping space you have with them. Babies, toddlers, maybe a cousin or two. It's a cuddle puddle of limbs and tunics. Diapers aren't really a thing, by the way. So if the baby has an accident, that's just part of the bedding now. Welcome to medieval life. You might wonder, well, couldn't they at least move the sleeping area away from the kitchen stuff? Oh honey, there isn't a kitchen. Everything is in one room. The hearth is where you cook. The table is where you eat. And your bed is where you digest and sleep, and probably give birth. The term open floor plan wasn't invented in Silicon Valley. It was surviving in a mud-walled hut centuries ago. At night, the rhythm of the house slows, but it never stops. Someone's always coughing. A dog barks outside. The wind whistles through the thatch. And you lie back on the table, fully clothed, knees bent to avoid slipping off, listening to the slow, sleepy sounds of the household. You itch. The straw pokes your back. There's a suspicious draft coming from under the door. You pull your cloak tighter and hope the table doesn't creak too loudly when you turn over. And tomorrow morning, you'll dust the crumbs off this same surface, slap down a hunk of cheese, and call it breakfast. There's no separation here, no work/life balance. No space for pajamas, and absolutely no slippers. Your clothes are your uniform, your armor, your blanket, and your dignity, all wrapped into one itchy, unwashed bundle. So the next time you lean over your memory foam mattress to fluff your feather pillow, just remember, your medieval self is curled on a shared bench that doubles as a dinner tray, hoping no one rolls over and kicks the stew pot. Chapter 4. The fire crackles low in the hearth. Just a few glowing embers left now. You're already wrapped in your only cloak, your tunic sticking slightly to the grime behind your knees. You're not taking it off. Not just because it's cold. Not just because the bedding is thin. But because, let's be real, where would you change? This one-room cottage has no corners, no curtains, and no concept of privacy. Welcome to the medieval peasant life, where modesty looks a lot like survival. You shift under your blanket, a rough shared woolen thing that smells more like wet dog than anything comforting, and try to find a position where you're not elbow to elbow with your younger brother. You scoot an inch to the left and bump your mother's feet. She grunts in her sleep. That's the thing about sleeping in one room with 5 other people. Everyone knows when someone farts, mumbles, snores, or shifts. And yes, you're all fully dressed. Peasants weren't stripping down in the evenings for many reasons, but near the top of that list, modesty and shame. It might sound ironic. After all, you're sleeping next to your siblings, parents, and maybe even a farmhand or two. But in a culture shaped by Christian morality, physical exposure was a delicate matter. Historians still argue whether peasant modesty was as deeply felt as it was taught, but church records and moral teachings from the time suggest a clear trend. Nudity was sinful, suspicious, or downright animalistic, something you tried to avoid unless you were bathing, rarely, or dead, hopefully clothed at the time of judgment. In fact, some people were buried in their best tunics because they feared showing up to Judgment Day naked would cost them eternal salvation. Even children past infancy were expected to start covering themselves, if not for vanity, then for virtue. Many peasant families followed the teachings passed down by their parish priests, who preached sermons warning against vanity, pride, and fleshly temptation. You weren't supposed to think about your body too much, and you definitely weren't supposed to be showing it. And that doesn't just apply to getting undressed. No doors meant no secrets. If you were changing clothes, say, to wash your single tunic once a season, you'd often do it behind a hanging cloth or with someone standing guard, not for comfort, for decency, and because the wrong look from the wrong person could lead to nasty rumors or worse, especially for women. Let's pause for a moment and remember, this is a world without underwear as we know it. Most peasants wore long shirts or shifts under their tunics, basic linen garments to catch sweat and grime, but actual drawers or underpants, not common for your social class. That means stripping down at night leaves you exposed in more ways than one. It's not just immodest, it's downright scandalous. Now, consider what that means in a shared sleeping space. You're lying side by side with your relatives, or sometimes even your in-laws. Family ties were strong, and housing was limited, so it wasn't uncommon for extended households to bunk together. That means couples, yes, even married ones, rarely had the luxury of private time. Want to snuggle? Do it quietly. Want to do anything else? Let's just say discretion was an art form. In some parts of medieval Europe, young couples were even expected to share sleeping quarters with parents or siblings until they could afford to build or inherit their own space. And if you were a servant or laborer, you were often sleeping in the same room, or even the same bed, as your master's family or other workers. Again, clothes stayed firmly on. Quirky tidbit for you. There were actually rules in some towns banning mixed-gender bedding arrangements, especially for servants. In 14th century Florence, for example, city laws warned against male and female servants sharing sleeping quarters unless they were married or related. Why? Because clothes might be on, but temptation was always a risk. Better to bundle up in wool and stay decent. But modesty wasn't just about avoiding lust. It was also about status. In peasant society, showing off your body, sun-tanned, scabbed, rough from work, wasn't desirable. You weren't sculpted or pampered like the nobility. You were covered in bruises, scars, bug bites, and more than one mystery rash. There was no body positivity movement here. Your body was your tool, not your canvas. And you kept your tools wrapped. And let's be honest, changing out of your clothes would mean dealing with all the smells, not just yours, everyone's. Because sleeping in your clothes at least contains some of the odor. Bare bodies under a shared blanket, that's just chemical warfare. Besides, what if there's a knock at the door in the middle of the night? Or a wolf howl outside? Or, heaven forbid, a fire? You don't want to go fumbling around in the dark for your hose and tunic. That kind of delay could cost you your life. Dressed sleep means instant readiness. Peasants were constantly aware of threats. Bandits, disease, angry neighbors, the occasional tax collector. Being found naked was both embarrassing and dangerous. Being found dead and naked. Now that was just tragic. So people went to sleep ready to run, work, or fight if needed. Which leads us to one of the oddest consequences of medieval sleep arrangements, dreams, and their interpretations. Dreaming naked, or of someone else being naked, was often seen as a spiritual sign. Sinful thoughts, shameful secrets. Priests and confessors took dreams seriously. If you woke up sweating from a dream where you weren't wearing clothes, you might actually take it to confession the next morning. Some monasteries kept dream journals for precisely this reason. Meanwhile, you're just trying to roll over without letting the blanket slip too far off your shoulder. Now, imagine being a woman in this world. Modesty expectations were even stricter. Unmarried women were expected to keep themselves covered and clean, even during sleep. Getting undressed, even partially, in front of siblings or family friends. It could ruin your reputation. Even married women had to be cautious. Gossip spread fast, and a single accusation of indecency could mean getting dragged before the local court or worse, the church tribunal. Historians point to various texts, letters, sermons, court records, where neighbors reported one another for indecent behavior, sometimes just for glimpses of ankles or bare shoulders in the wrong context. So yeah, sleep naked. Good luck explaining that. So tonight, as you settle into your corner of the straw pile, you pull your tunic tighter, you shift onto your side, and tuck your knees under your chin. Your cloak, stiff from a week of rain, rests like a damp shield across your back. The cold presses in, but you're not about to strip down. Not for warmth, not for comfort, not even for rebellion. Your clothes are your boundary, your armor, your public face, even in sleep. Someone farts, someone else coughs. You press your nose into your sleeve and try to breathe through it. And as you drift toward a thin, flickering sleep, you know the truth. There is no such thing as getting ready for bed. There's just crawling into your spot and hoping no one rolls over onto your arm. Chapter 5. The itch starts sometime after midnight. Not the cold kind, the scratchy kind, deep in the folds of your tunic, right where the wool rubs under your arms. You shift, trying to find a new position on the straw bedding, but the sensation follows you like a curse. And then you feel it. A tiny tickle crawling across your neck. Congratulations, you've just met your true bedmates, fleas and lice. Forget the fire, the straw, the cloak wrapped tight around your feet. This is why you never take your clothes off. Because removing them might give the little buggers a chance to relocate. And in medieval times, clothes weren't just garments. They were the neighborhood for a bustling insect metropolis. Lice, fleas, and bedbugs thrived in medieval Europe. They loved wool. They loved straw bedding. And they especially loved people who never changed their clothes, which means they loved you. Peasants often wore the same outfit for weeks, even months at a time. Laundry wasn't just a hassle. It was dangerous in winter and expensive in summer. So your clothes stayed on day and night, gathering dust, sweat, and a thriving colony of itchy passengers. It might gross you out, but here's a fun fact. Many people named their lice. Okay, not literally, but they accepted them as part of daily life. Kids picked lice off each other like monkeys. Adults scratched without shame. Some even believed certain kinds of body lice kept the bad humors out. Medieval doctors didn't fully understand germs, but they believed in balancing the four humors, and occasionally, itching was seen as a healthy purge, a minor evil that kept worse ones at bay. Historians still argue whether medieval people tried to combat lice actively or simply tolerated them. Some archaeological finds suggest attempts at rudimentary hygiene. Wooden combs, ash-based washing powders, even boiling garments in lye when possible. But for most peasants, these efforts were rare, and hot water wasn't exactly flowing from the tap. So you scratch, and you stay dressed. Because if you take off your tunic and shake it out, you're just sending a battalion of fleas back into the straw. And tomorrow night, they'll be twice as hungry. Let's talk about that straw, by the way. You might imagine a quaint little pile, golden and crisp. No, it's flattened, dusty, and probably moldy. Straw mattresses, often just a tick, a fabric sack, filled with chaff, were not fluffy. Over time, they compressed into mats harder than your kitchen table. They didn't get cleaned often. Maybe you dump the old straw and refill the tick once a year, if your harvest allowed it. And that straw was prime real estate for more than just fleas. Mice made homes there. So did spiders. And let's not forget bedbugs, which, unlike fleas, didn't bother hopping off for daylight hours. They stayed in the cracks of your wooden bed frame, if you had one, or in the seams of your blanket, or inside your clothes. You might be thinking, why not just boil your clothes or wash them regularly? Oh, sweet modern mind. Boiling clothes meant access to large iron pots, firewood, water, and time. Most peasants had one pot, and it was for food. You weren't wasting it on your smelly tunic. And lye soap. That stuff could eat your skin off. It was harsh, homemade, and dangerous when used too often. So unless the lice were truly unbearable, most people just lived with them. In fact, some used superstitions to explain the itching. If you scratched your left shoulder before sunrise, it meant someone was thinking about you. If you found a flea on your chest, it might be a sign from the saints. The human body was a battleground for signs, portents, and spirits, and parasites blurred the lines between natural and supernatural. Still, you do what you can. In the morning, you'll pick at your tunic seams, flick off whatever's moving, and brush your hands through your hair like that'll solve the problem. You might rub in some ashes from the hearth or smear a bit of bacon grease behind your ears. An old trick said to trap fleas. Did it work? Unlikely. But it made you feel like you were doing something. And let's not forget the smell. Oh yes, that never-washed wool tunic. It's not just warm, it's aromatic. Add in the smoke from the hearth, the damp from the thatched roof, the faint scent of fermented turnips, and the musk of 6 other people breathing the same stale air, and you've got yourself a funk stew. Peasants didn't bathe daily. Weekly would be a luxury. Monthly was more common. And full immersion. Almost unheard of. Sure, you might splash your face in the stream in summer or rub yourself with a cloth, but stripping naked and scrubbing down was something you did on big occasions, like your wedding. Maybe Easter, maybe not even then. That means you sleep not only in your clothes, but with the day's full grime sealed into the fabric, like a slow-cooked stew. And yet, you get used to it. The body adapts. Your nose stops noticing. You stop being bothered by the crawling, the itching, the crusted seams under your armpits. This is just life. Comfort isn't a right. It's a rumor. What matters is getting enough sleep to haul wood, dig trenches, or grind grain tomorrow. You curl tighter under your blanket, pulling your cloak up so only your eyes show. You feel the movement of something on your shin. Maybe a flea, maybe a dream. Your sibling coughs in the dark. A dog barks outside. You shiver, but not from cold this time, just from knowing that even when you sleep, you're never truly alone. At least not in the insect sense. Now, here's the darkly funny part. Nobles had lice too. Kings, queens, popes, no one was spared. Even the fancier folks with their velvet robes and silk sheets had parasites. You could have the finest feather bed in Paris and still wake up scratching. The difference: nobles could burn their sheets. You just try not to get bloodstains on yours, because you're sleeping in them again tonight. Some monasteries experimented with hygiene. Monks bathed more often, especially in warmer regions, and they sometimes shaved their heads to keep lice away. But even they couldn't escape infestation entirely. One monk famously wrote that cleanliness is godliness, but godliness does not kill lice. Fair enough. So, you itch, you sigh, you scratch some more. You think about stripping off your tunic, maybe just for a minute, to shake out the worst of the vermin. But you won't, because it's cold. Because someone might wake up and see you. Because deep down, you know the lice will come back anyway. They always do. And so you settle in again. You wrap your arms around yourself, your tunic stiff like armor, and your cloak draped like a shroud. You stare at the flickering shadows on the wall until sleep swallows you. It's not a peaceful sleep. It's not comfortable, but it's yours. And tomorrow, you'll wake up in the same clothes, just like you've done every day for the past 100 mornings, just like you'll do for the next 100. Chapter 6. You're dreaming of fire, not a warm, cozy hearth, but a sudden, roaring blaze. And when you jolt awake, heart thudding, it's still dark, and the cottage is freezing. Just a dream. For now. But the fear lingers. Because fire in a medieval peasant home, it's not just scary, it's common and deadly. That's why, even when the air is cold and your skin prickles under your tunic, you sleep away from the flames, fully dressed, half alert, ready to run. The fire in your home is life. It's where you cook, where you gather, where you dry your socks. If you're lucky enough to own more than one pair, it's the only source of heat in the entire house. No fireplace, no chimney, just a central hearth. A shallow pit dug into the ground or ringed with stones in the middle of the floor, with smoke curling upward and out through a hole in the thatch. It's cozy, sure, but also a total death trap. One stray ember, one log rolled too far, one cloak left too close to the fire, and the entire house could go up in flames. Thatched roofs burn like kindling. Wattle and daub walls crumble when scorched. Your bedding, made of straw. Your blanket, wool maybe, but not fireproof. Your tunic, dry, grease-soaked, and flammable as sin. Historians still argue whether peasant homes had designated fire safety practices, but most agree the design of medieval huts was a constant hazard. Fires weren't rare events. They were expected. Entire villages could burn down from one neglected hearth. In towns, curfews were introduced specifically to put out household fires before nightfall. A bell would ring. Fires had to be extinguished. But in rural areas, you needed that heat to survive the night, so you banked the coals under ash and hoped nothing sparked. You lie there, listening. The fire's embers hiss softly. It's almost silent now, just the occasional creak of old beams settling. The heat has mostly gone out, leaving a damp chill in its place. You pull your tunic collar higher, fold your arms across your chest, and try not to think about how many houses you've seen blackened and hollowed by fire. Even when sleeping, your instincts whisper, stay alert, stay dressed. Let's say, in your dream scenario, you did undress before bed. You strip off your tunic, hang it by the fire to dry, maybe even rinse your feet and wash the crusted edge of your shirt. Feels good, right? For a moment. Until the fire pops. A spark jumps. Lands on the edge of that shirt. No one wakes up in time. The blanket catches. The straw mat ignites. And because the air in your cottage is so dry, and your ceiling is literally made of dead grass, you have about 60 seconds before the whole thing is engulfed. Your clothes burn, your home burns, and you're scrambling, half-dressed, through smoke and flame in the pitch-black night, praying your goats make it out. Yeah, that's why you sleep clothed. Even nobles, who lived in larger stone homes with fireplaces, often kept clothes nearby when they slept, especially if the keep had a wooden roof or interior partitions. Fires broke out in castles too, after all, and the peasants, with their hay piles, smoky beams, and soot-stained walls. We were living in tinderboxes. Some peasant families used fireboards, wooden barriers set up around the hearth to keep children or animals from tumbling in. But these were more of a luxury. Most of the time, caution was the only safety net. Sleep with your feet away from the flame. Bank the fire low. Keep your cloak on you, not near the sparks. You're not alone either. Fires weren't just dangerous, they were sacred. Fire meant food. Fire meant heat. In some traditions, fire was holy, lit in a certain way on feast days, used to bless crops, even carried from house to house in clay pots during rituals. And yet, the fire didn't care. It gave life, and it took it. Your respect wasn't optional. It was instinct. Quirky detail. Some peasants believed fire had a soul. If the hearth went completely out, if the last ember died, it was bad luck, a sign of ill health, a broken household. So people passed embers from neighbor to neighbor to keep their hearths alive. They carried fire in iron tongs, wrapped in moss or bark. But even then, they kept their distance. Fire was friend and enemy. This relationship with fire shaped your sleep habits more than you might think. Think of it like medieval co-sleeping with your heat source. But you didn't cuddle it. You watched it. Some households had a designated fire watcher, someone who stayed up half the night to keep it safe. This was often an older child or a grandparent too frail for farm work. They'd sit wrapped in a cloak, poking the coals, humming, mumbling prayers. You, though, you're not the watcher tonight. You're trying to sleep. But the fire's still there, flickering in your thoughts, because you know it's not if something will happen. It's when. And when it does, you'd better not be fiddling around in the dark trying to find your breeches. That's why you leave your shoes closed, your belt within reach, your hat folded under your head like a pillow. If something happens, you grab, you run. No time to dress. You're already ready, always ready. You roll to your side, tug your cloak higher, and stare at the glow from the hearth. The light plays across the ceiling like ghostly fingers. You tell yourself it's safe tonight. The fire's low. The wood is green. The logs were banked deep in ash, just like your mother taught you. Still, you sleep with one ear open, one eye half-lidded, because you know too well what happens when fire forgets it's supposed to behave. Sleep doesn't come easily, not when warmth can betray you, not when survival means wearing your crusty, flea-bitten, soot-smudged tunic for the 20th night in a row, not when every ember is a potential nightmare. Chapter 7. You stir before the rooster this time, not from noise, but because your hip has gone numb. Again. The straw beneath you has thinned into a prickly pancake, and your tunic's stiff crease is digging into your side like a ruler made of hay. You shift slowly, careful not to wake the baby sleeping nearby. She's nestled in her mother's arms, face half covered by a ragged shawl, eyes fluttering beneath the veil of early dawn. The cottage is still dark, still cold, still wrapped in that deep, earthy silence only peasants understand. And here comes the morning ritual. You sit up, rub your crusted eyes, stretch your arms with a soft grunt, and do absolutely nothing to your outfit. Because what would you even change into? You don't own pajamas. You don't even know the word. There's your tunic. Maybe a second, thinner shift underneath if you're lucky. And that's it. Your morning routine is simply the act of standing up without falling over. The tunic you slept in is the tunic you'll work in. The tunic you'll kneel in at Mass. The tunic you'll run in if the sheep escape the pen again. No changing, no makeup, no mirror, You might splash some water on your face from the bucket by the door, if it hasn't frozen solid. But washing your clothes, brushing your hair, that's for special occasions. Today's just another day, and you're already dressed. Medieval peasants slept in their clothes because clothes weren't accessories. They were identity. The tunic was your second skin. It wasn't about style, and it definitely wasn't about comfort. It was about function. It marked your trade, your age, your gender, and sometimes your marital status. A man's tunic might be short or long depending on whether he worked in the fields or had a slightly cushier job like miller or reeve. A woman's shift, long and belted at the waist, wasn't just fabric, it was social shorthand. The coarse wool or linen of your clothes smelled faintly of the earth, sweat, and smoke from the hearth. The seams might be rough, the fabric stiff and scratchy, but this was home. Your body had grown used to the weight and the feel of it. Taking it off felt almost like shedding your skin. And who knew what lay beneath? Chills, bug bites, the grime of a hard day's labor. Sumptuary laws tried to control who could wear what, especially when peasants got too fancy for their station. But enforcement was spotty at best. The village lord might grumble if he spotted a peasant with dyed cloth or a silver buckle, but for most, their patched and faded garments spoke louder than any royal decree. The dirt on your hem and the patched elbows did all the talking. I work with my hands, I live with the land. And guess what else they did? Protected you. That tunic was your shield against splinters, sunburn, and stinging nettles. It was your apron, your towel, your napkin, your raincoat. You used it to swaddle infants, to cover baskets, to wipe your nose, and other things, to fan the fire, to carry eggs. Taking it off at night, it felt wrong, unsafe, like leaving your tools outside in the rain. Now, there's another layer to all this, seasonal clothing, or rather, the lack thereof. Peasants didn't rotate closets when the seasons changed. Most owned one, maybe 2 sets of clothes. If it was winter, you might layer an extra shift underneath or pull on a wool-over tunic. In summer, you just sweat. You didn't swap for something lighter. You endured. When winter nights bit deep into your bones, your clothes were your only warmth, trapping your body heat even as the cold seeped through the cottage's cracks and thatched roof. In the summer, when the air was thick with the buzzing of flies and the sweat ran down your back, the fabric clung to you like a second skin, and you longed for a breeze that never came. That's why clothes were never casually tossed to the side. They were revered in a strange way. If you did own a second set, maybe saved for Sunday Mass, you stored it in a chest, wrapped in cloth, away from fire, mice, and children. Washing it was a full-day event involving cauldrons, lye soap, scrubbing stones, and prayers that the fabric wouldn't disintegrate in the process. Washing clothes was a ritual, too, rare and arduous. The water was hauled from the well, heated over the hearth, and mixed with wood ash or lye to make soap. The grime and sweat were scrubbed with stone or sand. You might only wash your best clothes a few times a year, fearing the rough treatment would tear the precious fabric. And if you were poor, well, that itchy tunic was probably last cleaned the same time your mother found that weird patch of mold on the bread. Contrast this with nobility, who had multiple wardrobes for different occasions, changing their gowns and robes several times a day, bathing frequently, and enjoying soft linens and silks that peasants could only dream of. Their clothes were a display of wealth and status. Your clothes? They were a badge of survival. So when you sleep, your outfit stays on. In winter, it's your insulation. In spring, it's your bug net. In summer, it's your sweat rag. And in autumn, when the nights get damp and cold, and the air smells like mud and frost, your clothes are your one constant. They're the only thing between your skin and the harsh indifference of the outside world. There's a certain stoicism to it, a resilience born from hardship. You don't complain about the scratchiness or the smell or the heaviness. You accept it because it's all you have, and it's all you know. It's a part of you, your identity, your history. So next time you pull on your favorite sweater or slip into pajamas that cost a fortune, remember the medieval peasant's tunic, the unsung hero of their day and night. The clothes that didn't just cover them, but carried their stories, their struggles, and their lives. Quirky detail for you. In some regions, clothes were bequeathed in wills. Not land, not money, but that one decent cloak. That was an inheritance. That patched pair of hose, a treasured item. If someone died in your village, their garments were likely passed to a relative or friend who'd mend them, resize them, and wear them for years to come. That means your tunic might have lived 2 or 3 lives before you ever slid it over your head. You don't think about it much when you're young. Clothes are just what you're given. But as you age, as you watch neighbors weep over stolen garments, or hear someone curse because they tore their only winter cloak on a fence post, you begin to understand. Clothes aren't just warmth. They're survival capital. The line between being dressed and being doomed is razor thin in peasant life. And that's not just true in winter. Picture yourself drenched in a summer storm, tunic plastered to your back. There's no closet full of fresh options waiting at home. You don't strip down and change. You wait. You sleep in it, wet, cold, and grumbling. And in the morning, you hope the sun is kind enough to dry you before the blisters set in. Which brings us to sleep again. You roll over on your mat. The itch is still there. Maybe fleas, maybe just sweat. The cloak you've pulled over your legs isn't quite long enough tonight. You try to tuck your feet up into your tunic to keep warm, but it's already twisted from a night of shifting and turning. No use. You mutter under your breath and yank the blanket, what's left of it, up over your shoulders. The concept of comfort isn't real to you. There's tolerable, and there's miserable. Tonight is tolerable. You're dressed. You're inside. The roof didn't leak much. The fire hasn't gone out. No wolves have tried to nose through the door. It's the peasant version of a luxury suite. So when you wake up tomorrow and trudge outside in the same tunic, dragging your feet through the slush and straw, don't feel self-conscious. Everyone looks the same. You're not late for anything, and you don't need to worry about what to wear, because your sleepwear is your daywear. Your wardrobe is your armor, your bedding, and your only consistent possession. And somehow, through all the stink and scratch, the bugs and the blistered seams, that tunic keeps you grounded. It's seen you through births, harvests, weddings, funerals, snow, fire, flood, and famine. It's your second skin, and until the day someone else wears it after you, it stays on, even when you sleep. Chapter 8. You're up before the sun again, not because you want to be, but because the rooster crows like he's trying to rip open the sky, and the baby next to you starts to fuss, her soft wails cutting through the cold morning silence like a knife through that stale hunk of rye bread you're about to gnaw on for breakfast. You pull yourself up from the straw bedding. Every joint complains. Every movement feels stiff. Your tunic is wrinkled and damp under the arms. Your knees itch where the coarse fabric rubbed raw. But you don't change. You don't even think about changing. What would you put on? The same thing. Always the same thing. But today is different in one subtle, nagging way. Your clothes feel heavier. Not just from wear, but from dirt. From days, weeks of sweat, soot, dried mud, and spilled porridge caking into every fold. They sag. They smell. They scrape like sandpaper in your sleeves, and you're starting to consider something drastic. You might actually need to wash them. But here's the thing. For a medieval peasant, washing clothes wasn't just a hassle. It was a whole operation. First, you need water. That means walking to the stream or well with your bucket. Unless you live somewhere blessed with a barrel outside catching rain. You check the weather. It's cloudy and sharp with frost. Bad drying conditions, but there's no choice. You can't keep sleeping in this crusty armor of sweat and sadness. So you grit your teeth, gather your courage, and start peeling your tunic off. Slowly, carefully, like separating two layers of bark that fused overnight. And now, you're standing there in your shift. A coarse linen underlayer, slightly less gross than the tunic, but not by much. You clutch your tunic in your hands like a wounded animal, and you feel something deeply uncomfortable. Nakedness. You're technically covered, but the wind bites sharper now. You feel exposed, vulnerable. You're not used to this. Even your skin seems surprised to be in daylight. This is why peasants didn't wash clothes often, because washing meant undressing, and undressing meant risk. Risk of being seen, risk of catching cold, risk of being caught unready. Remember, there are no locks on your door, no private room to disrobe. You have to do this fast. Maybe near the fire, if no one else is watching. Or maybe at the stream, hunched behind a bush with your head spinning, praying no neighbor comes past. Historians still argue over how frequently peasants wash their garments. Some evidence points to seasonal washings. Twice a year if you're lucky, usually in spring and autumn, when temperatures were mild and water was easier to access. But other documents suggest more regular spot cleaning for visible stains. Mud, blood, spilled ale, using ash, sand, or even stale urine to scrub it out. Yes, urine. It was acidic and effective. Not pleasant, but practical. You take your tunic down to the stream. It's freezing. Your fingers go numb as soon as they touch the water. You scrub with a stone, digging into the seams where lice lay eggs and sweat pools thick. You try not to think about how many winters this garment has survived, how many nights you've slept in it, how many memories are soaked into the threads. And then comes the drying. You wring it out, slap it across a rock or branch, and wait, and wait, and wait. While you're waiting, you don't have a backup. You huddle near the fire, arms crossed, trying not to shiver too obviously. Because here's the peasant's reality. Laundry means sitting around in half-wet undergarments while your one decent outfit drips dry like a gutted fish. Some families try to avoid this situation entirely. They staggered washing days. One person went half-clothed, while everyone else stayed bundled up. Others did laundry in rotation, one sleeve at a time, one leg, one patch, anything to avoid being entirely without your protective, greasy outer shell. Quirky tidbit. Some medieval folks believed wet clothes left on too long could draw illness into the body. That's right. People thought damp fabric could pull sickness into your blood. And considering how many people died of the chill or lung rot, which we now know as pneumonia or bronchitis, it wasn't entirely unfounded. So even while drying, you're wary. You flip the tunic. You prod it. You mutter to it. You watch the sky like it owes you something. Eventually, it's dry enough. Not warm, not fluffy, just not dripping. You pull it back over your head, and the sensation is almost exhilarating. Familiar, protective, like slipping back into your identity. You're not just warm again. You're yourself again, covered, cloaked, ready to face the world. And it's not just about comfort, it's about readiness. You've heard the stories of fires in the night, of soldiers riding into villages, of wolves slipping through open doors. You've seen people lose everything in minutes. You've seen mothers drag barefoot children into the snow because they couldn't find their tunics fast enough. So no, you don't want to be caught off guard. You don't want to fumble with laces and hems while chaos unfolds. Sleeping clothed is sleeping prepared. You can leap out of bed, boots in hand, tunic already on, ready to run or fight, or drag the goat back from the riverbank again. Even in town, things aren't much different. If you're a laborer who rents a room in a crowded building, you sleep surrounded by strangers. Your belongings are at constant risk of theft. Undressing at night, it's like asking to get robbed blind. So you bundle yourself up, wrap your satchel strap around your leg, and close your eyes with your shoes still nearby. just in case. Sleeping clothed also means you can answer a knock at the door without hesitation. It means you can rise for early mass without fumbling in the dark. It means you can carry a sick child to the next village in the middle of the night without thinking twice. You're not getting ready for the day. You've been ready since you closed your eyes. That's why bedtime never meant undressing. It meant settling, adjusting your belt, folding your cloak into a makeshift pillow, tucking your shift between your legs to stop it from bunching, pulling your tunic down over your knees, and using the same knot of fabric you wore all day as a kind of weighted blanket. Your outfit was your bed, and when you slept in it, you didn't just carry the weight of fabric, you carried the weight of responsibility, of survival, of dignity. It may be stiff, it may be itchy, but it's yours, and it keeps you in one piece. You lie down again, clothes now slightly cleaner, though still smelling faintly of river moss. You tuck your hands under your arms, the fire's down to embers again. The light frost glitters at the edges of the thatched roof above you. You close your eyes, and despite the stiffness in your shoulders, the lingering cold in your sleeves, the scratch on your shin, you feel almost comfortable. Not because the straw is softer, not because you're cleaner, but because you're clothed. And that in this world is the only bedtime ritual that matters. Chapter 9. The sun spills gold through the cracks in the wooden walls, painting stripes across your face. You blink and sigh, the chill of the early morning sinking into your bones like a stubborn fog. Your eyes dart down to your clothes, still rumpled and damp from yesterday's washing, if you were lucky enough to manage it. You sit up slowly, aware of the dozen tiny aches that say you slept on straw again, not a feather bed. You're wrapped in the same layers you wore yesterday, the only ones you own. You tug your cloak tighter around your shoulders and push your feet into your worn leather shoes, stiff but serviceable. This is your routine. Sleeping in your clothes, waking in them, wearing them through the day. It's the rhythm of peasant life. And it's not just about modesty, hygiene, or readiness. There's something deeper here, something woven into the fabric of the medieval world, a sense of security. Your clothes aren't just cloth. They're a statement of belonging, a tether to your community and your role within it. Wearing the same tunic day and night links you to the earth you till, the animals you tend, the family you protect. Stripping off those layers would be like stripping off your identity, and that's a risk few could afford. But let's pause and consider the more practical side of things. Cold. Medieval nights were brutally cold. No central heating, no thick mattresses, just stone, wood, and straw. And your clothes, your woolen tunic, coarse linen shift, and heavy cloak were your first and last defense against the chill. Sleeping without them would have been an invitation to frostbite or worse. Historians still argue about how much clothing was worn in bed across different regions and seasons. Some suggest in southern Europe, or during the warmer months, layers might be shed for comfort. But in northern Europe, where the nights could be bone-chilling even in spring, the necessity of keeping every stitch on was absolute. What is clear is that warmth mattered more than comfort or fashion. You pull your cloak tighter. The wool is stiff with age and smell, but it traps heat. You remember the old wives' tale about wrapping a lamb's wool around your feet to keep them warm at night. It's a crude sort of science, but it works. You could almost swear you hear the lamb's faint bleat somewhere in the folds of your cloak. And then there's the question of protection. The world outside your cottage isn't safe. Wolves roam nearby, their eerie howls a nightly soundtrack. Bandits prowl the roads, ever on the lookout for easy prey. Disease creeps through villages like a shadow, unseen but deadly. Sleeping clothed means you're ready to jump up at a moment's notice, grab your tools or your pitchfork, and defend your family from whatever threat might come. You shift in your straw bedding, listening to the low snores and murmurs of your family. Their clothes rustle and crunch as they adjust positions, all bundled in the same unwashed layers. It's a symphony of survival, a nightly reminder that you are not alone in your discomfort or your fight to stay alive. Here's a quirky detail. Some peasants believed their clothes held their spirit. That's why stealing someone's garment was considered a serious offense. It wasn't just theft of property, but theft of a piece of their soul. Clothes were so entwined with identity that losing them could be psychologically devastating. Folk tales abound of thieves cursed for stealing a cloak or a tunic, their victims haunted by dreams until their soul clothes were returned. You rub the sleep from your eyes and glance at the worn edges of your tunic. The fabric has been patched countless times, but it still holds together. Like you, like your family, like your village. Fragile, battered, but stubbornly enduring. Remember that flea and lice story. Well, despite the itching, those bugs also found your clothes a kind of home, a place to survive harsh winters and lean times. In a weird way, your clothes were both sanctuary and battleground. But it's not all grim. Sleeping clothed also offered small comforts. Your tunic's familiar smell, though a mix of sweat, smoke, and earth, was reassuring. It was the scent of your life, your work, your love, and your loss. You wrapped your cloak like a blanket within a blanket, each layer a shield against the world's cruelty. And of course, there was the warmth of shared sleep. In a cramped cottage, bodies pressed together for heat, you shared your clothes, your blankets, your breath. Sleeping fully dressed helped keep that warmth contained, prevented the cold from creeping between skin and fabric. In contrast, the wealthier classes slept in finer linens and layers designed to showcase status, and often changed clothing before bed to protect their precious fabrics. You might have heard the Lord's wife sighing over the chill of her silk nightgown, while you cursed the prickly straw and damp wool that kept you alive. Historians still debate the precise dynamics of medieval sleep, how many people shared a bed, how often clothes were changed, and what rituals surrounded bedtime. But what remains clear is this: clothes were central, not just for warmth or modesty or protection, but as an extension of the self. So as you lie there, half asleep and half shivering, surrounded by the quiet breathing of your family, you understand why you never undress for bed. Your clothes are more than just fabric. They are your armor, your comfort, your community. They are the first and last thing you wear every day and every night. Chapter 10. The morning light has fully spilled through the cracks now, and the smell of cooking fires curls around the village like a warm blanket. You lie in your corner of the crowded room, feeling the rough weave of your tunic against your skin. The same tunic you've worn for days, maybe weeks. You're tired, yes, but that's just the way things are. You're wrapped in the same clothes that kept you warm last night, that protected you from the chill seeping through the walls, and that will carry you through the day ahead. You try to imagine undressing before bed, the way you see nobles do in the stories whispered around the fire. Silk robes laid out neatly, linen sheets smelling of lavender, the gentle touch of clean skin under fine fabric. But that's not your life. For you, clothes are utility, survival, identity. And the layers you wear to sleep are just one more part of that daily armor. You sit up slowly, careful not to disturb the baby at your side. The tiny face, flushed with sleep, nestles against the mother's chest, the soft, ragged shawl barely shielding the infant from the cold morning air. You reach for the cloak draped over your shoulders. The fabric is stiff with age, its edges frayed and smudged with soot from the hearth. It smells of smoke, sweat, and something earthy you can't quite place. Maybe the field soil mixed with the wool. You pull it tighter around you, wrapping it like a shield against the lingering chill. The weight settles over your shoulders with a comforting familiarity, like an old friend refusing to let go. Around you, the cottage stirs. Groans and creaks echo off the timber walls as your family awakens. The low murmur of whispered prayers mingles with the soft grunts of stretching bodies. Someone coughs quietly in a corner. Another shifts, their blanket rustling. A patchwork of linen, wool, and worn cloth. All the bedding this humble home can afford. The small fire pit glows faintly, the embers clinging stubbornly to life, as if to offer a fragile promise of warmth. There's a rhythm to this. How your clothes have become extensions of yourself. Your grandmother's voice drifts back through memory. Clothes keep your skin safe and your soul safer. It wasn't just about modesty or warmth. It was about identity. These worn and patched garments carried the stories of your family. The threadbare sleeves mended one too many times. The faded patches stitched carefully over tears. Each mark a chapter in the tale of your life. Your tunic once belonged to your father, who wore it during long days of tending the fields and evenings by the fire. Sometimes you stitch a small patch in memory of a lost friend, or for a year when the harvest was so hard the ground seemed to swallow up itself. The clothes you wear, day and night, are silent testaments to endurance, resilience, and community. They are history woven into wool and linen. Peering around the room, you see others rousing, swathed in their own layers of coarse fabric. Some cradle children still wrapped tightly against the cold. Others sit by the fire, rubbing sleep from their eyes, their faces etched with the quiet determination of those who know hardship intimately. The mingled scents of smoke, sweat, damp earth, and unwashed wool fill the air, thick and heavy like the breath of the cottage itself. Sleep in this world is a fragile, restless thing. There is no endless stretch of unbroken rest, no soft feather beds or feather pillows. Instead, sleep comes in fits and starts, punctuated by the household's many sounds. The cough of a child, the creak of roof timber settling, the low bark of a dog seeking warmth. Sometimes, the boundaries between human and beast blur as animals press close for heat. A cat curled at your feet, a chicken tucked near your side. In bitter winter months, the cold bites so fiercely it seems to gnaw through the thickest wool. You dream of fire, red, roaring flames that dance away the chill, but wake shivering, pulling your cloak tighter still. Warmth is made of many things here. The closeness of family bodies pressed tight, layers of wool and linen, and a stubborn will to endure another night. Practicality rules all. The thought of changing clothes before bed would seem frivolous, even dangerous. Clothes are not simply coverings. They are your shield against a world that offers little mercy. The wool tunic scratches, but it stops splinters and nettles. The linen shift, thin though it may be, protects your skin from the dirt and grime of hard labor. Your cloak wards off the chill and shields you from the rain. In a world where every thread costs labor and every garment might last years, wearing clothes day and night is both necessity and comfort. And then there's the matter of readiness. Wolves lurk in the shadows beyond the village. Bandits roam the countryside. The specter of disease haunts every hearth. Sleeping clothed means you can spring to your feet at a moment's notice, grab your tools, or defend your family without fumbling for garments in the dark. It is a readiness born of harsh reality. There are also deeper, quieter beliefs entwined with these clothes. Some say they hold your spirit, your very essence. To lose your cloak or your tunic was to lose a part of yourself, a theft far graver than simple robbery. Stories tell of curses laid upon thieves who steal a garment, and of restless dreams until the stolen clothes are returned. This connection between self and cloth forms an invisible thread that binds you to your family, your village, and the generations who came before. Despite the hardships, the clothes you wear to sleep offer small comforts. The scent of hearth smoke and earth is familiar, a reminder of home. The stiff wool of your cloak is a weighted comfort, a tangible barrier against the cruelty outside. Each patch sewn on by your own hands or your mother's is a badge of survival. The fire crackles faintly now, the morning tending ritual beginning. Someone fetches water from the well. The sound of a wooden bucket scraping echoes through the village. You prepare yourself to rise, wrapped in the same armor you wore to bed, knowing it will carry you through the day's endless labor and into another night's fragile rest. Your clothing was part of that adaptation. Wearing your tunic to bed wasn't just about practicality. It was about staying connected to the life you led, the work you did, the family you protected. Taking off those layers would be like shedding a part of yourself, a vulnerability you couldn't afford. You think back to the fleas and lice, the itchiness and discomfort. It's not pleasant, but it's normal. You scratch discreetly, careful not to disturb the others, and remind yourself that everyone shares this burden. The bugs are part of the package, part of the price you pay for warmth and protection. You pull the cloak tighter and close your eyes for a moment, listening to the soft breathing of those around you. There's comfort in this shared struggle, in the knowledge that everyone here understands the sacrifices and the hardships. As the morning light grows stronger, you prepare to rise, still wrapped in your familiar layers. The day ahead is long and hard, but your clothes are ready for it, just as you are. They carry the history of your family, the weight of your labor, and the hope for tomorrow. And when night falls again, you'll slip back into them, ready to face whatever comes, itching, cold, fire, or fatigue. Because in a world where comfort is rare and survival is constant, sleeping in your clothes isn't just habit, it's a way of life. Chapter 11. The faint, cool light of dawn brushes across the worn wooden beams above you, casting long, thin shadows that stretch like fingers across the rough-hewn walls. You lie still for a moment, the rough straw beneath you poking through your tunic in places, reminding you that this bed is far from soft. But softness isn't a luxury afforded to you. Not tonight, not any night. Your body aches in places you didn't know could ache. Your neck stiff from sleeping upright against the stone wall. Your back sore from the hard surface. Your legs cramped from lying curled up in a position that offers the barest hint of warmth. Yet your clothes cling to you, heavy with the dampness of sweat and the faint odor of the hearth smoke. They are familiar now, like a second skin you can never shed. You shift carefully, mindful of the baby sleeping beside you, wrapped in your cloak, her breaths shallow and uneven. There's a soft snore from your husband across the room, mixed with the gentle rustle of your older children moving about quietly, preparing for the day's toil. In this dim, crowded space, you are never alone. You share your bed with family, with animals, with the very walls that have heard your whispered prayers and silent tears. And you share your clothes. Sleeping in your clothes might seem strange to the world beyond this village, the world of castles and silk, of warm baths and feather beds. But here, in your humble cottage, it's the only way you know how to survive. You remember your grandmother's stories of her youth, when she too slept fully clothed, her hands roughened by spinning flax, her feet calloused from endless walking. We wore our clothes to sleep because undressing meant vulnerability, she used to say. Vulnerability to cold, to fire, to thieves, and to the world itself. And she was right. The cold is a constant companion here. Your home, a small one-room hut made of wattle and dog with a thatched roof, is drafty and thin. The wind whistles through cracks in the walls, and the floorboards creak under the weight of the night's chill. The hearth's fire, though once roaring, has burned low, leaving only glowing embers that provide little heat. Your woolen cloak, though threadbare and stiff, traps what little warmth remains. Beneath it, your tunic, thick with layers of grime, still serves as insulation. Your shift, linen but coarse, breathes just enough to keep the damp at bay. Removing any of these layers would be foolish, an invitation to sickness, to frostbite, to an endless shivering that no hearth could cure. And yet, the warmth of your clothes is only part of the story. The risk of fire is a shadow that never leaves your mind. The last time a neighbor's hut caught ablaze, you and your family were awakened by screams and a crackle of flames. You scrambled to your feet, grasping your cloak, dragging your children through smoke and heat to safety. The clothes you wore that night saved you. No time to dress, no time to gather belongings, just the fabric that was already on your back. This is the stark reality of life here. The same fire that warms you could destroy you in moments. The thatched roofs, dry straw bedding, and wooden walls make every home a tinderbox. Sleeping in your clothes means you are ready to flee, to fight, or to call for help at a moment's notice. But perhaps the most intimate reason you never undress is the presence of your relentless bedfellows. The fleas, The lice, the bedbugs. You've learned to live with them. They burrow into your clothes, your hair, your bedding. They crawl and bite, causing endless itch and discomfort, but they are also familiar. You know their patterns, their hiding places. Stripping off your clothes would expose your bare skin to their bites in a more painful way and risk the spread of disease. You recall the story of a traveling monk who once visited your village. He spoke of cleansing and purity, of washing away the dirt and filth that cling to the body. But even he admitted that true cleanliness was rare in these parts, and that the lice and fleas were stubborn pests not easily defeated. His remedies, a mixture of herbs and smoke, were little comfort to you. You had tried the same, rubbing ashes into your clothes or smudging your bedding with aromatic plants, but nothing could chase away the biting reality of your nightly companions. The social aspect of your clothing is equally important. Your tunic is not merely a garment, but a symbol of your station. The coarse wool marks you as a peasant, a worker of the land. To appear naked or even partially undressed would be to expose not only your body, but your status, your vulnerabilities, your hardships. Clothes in this world are a language of survival, a declaration of your place in the social order. Moreover, washing clothes is no simple task. It requires time, water, and fuel, all scarce resources in a peasant's life. The process of washing, drying, and mending garments is laborious and often reserved for special occasions. This means that your clothes are worn until they are threadbare, patched with scraps of fabric, and still worn again. Historians continue to debate the frequency of medieval laundry and the extent to which peasants could maintain personal hygiene. Some argue that washing once a year was common, often tied to religious festivals such as Easter, while others suggest that spot cleaning was more regular but full washes were rare. Regardless, the reality was that many peasants wore the same clothes for months on end. Your own family's experience supports this. Your eldest daughter proudly shows off the patch on her sleeve, an emblem of her handiwork, a testament to resourcefulness in a world where new fabric was a luxury. The scent of smoke and sweat lingers on all your clothes, mingling with the faint aroma of the herbs you burn to mask odors. There is also a spiritual dimension to your clothing. Some villagers believe that garments carry the essence of the wearer, that a piece of soul clings to the fabric. Stealing or losing one's clothes is thus a grave misfortune, potentially exposing one to evil spirits or misfortune. This belief adds a layer of reverence and caution to how you handle your clothes. When you finally do remove your tunic, perhaps during a rare bath or after a full day's labor, you handle it with care. It is folded slowly, examined for new holes or worn spots, and placed carefully near the hearth to dry. This ritual reminds you of the fragility of your life and the endurance required to face another day. Sleeping in your clothes, then, is not a mere habit, but a complex adaptation to a harsh world. It is about protection from the cold and fire, defense against parasites, preservation of dignity, and readiness to act at a moment's notice. It is about belonging and identity, survival and resilience. As you lie down once more, the rough fabric pressed against your skin, you feel a strange comfort. These clothes, worn and weathered, are your shield against the unknown. They are the threads that connect you to your ancestors and to your children. They carry your stories, your struggles, your hope. And as the night deepens and the village quiets, you close your eyes and surrender to sleep, still clothed, still ready, still alive. Chapter 12. You wake once again to the faint crackle of embers in the hearth and the low murmur of your family stirring in the dim light. The air is cool, carrying the faint scent of wood smoke mixed with the earthy smell of damp straw and unwashed wool. Your body feels stiff. The knots of discomfort settled firmly in your muscles after another night's sleep on the hard, uneven floor. Yet your clothes, the worn tunic, the scratchy shift beneath, the heavy wool cloak, cling to you like old friends. They've become part of your skin, as inseparable as your heartbeat. This rhythm, sleeping clothed, waking clothed, is more than habit. its survival instinct finely tuned over generations. Your clothes protect you from the biting cold that seeps through cracks in the walls, from the unpredictable dangers of the night, and even from the biting insects that share your space. It's a constant, practical shield against a harsh world. But beyond the practical, there's a deeper story woven into the fabric, one that ties the very threads of your garments to the complex social and spiritual tapestry of medieval peasant life. Every stitch in your tunic, every patch sewn onto your cloak carries a story. Maybe it's the patch your mother carefully added after you scraped your knee in the fields, a reminder of the day you learned your limits. Perhaps it's the frayed edge mended by your sister after your younger brother tripped and tore the fabric in a reckless chase. These clothes are living history, worn evidence of resilience, resourcefulness, and community. They connect you not just to your family, but to your village and your place in the wider world. You think about the strange, almost sacred relationship peasants had with their clothing. On one hand, clothes were a practical necessity: warmth, protection, modesty. On the other, they were identity badges, subtle declarations of belonging and status in a world where social position was everything. To be seen undressed, or even partially undressed, was more than embarrassing. It was dangerous. Clothes spoke volumes in a society where most were illiterate, and symbols and signs ruled daily life. The medieval mindset often saw clothes as extensions of the person, imbued with spiritual significance. Many believed garments carried a portion of one's soul, a fragment of the self woven into the threads. To lose your clothes was to lose a piece of yourself, a vulnerability far beyond the physical. This belief made stealing clothing an especially heinous crime, not merely theft, but a profound spiritual violation. You recall tales whispered around the fire of villagers who buried their loved ones wrapped in their best garments, convinced that the fabric would shield their souls in the afterlife. Clothes were not just protection against the elements, but guardians against the mysteries and terrors beyond death. The idea of a body without its clothes was unthinkable, an incomplete journey. Sleeping in your clothes was a way to reinforce this connection. It was a means to keep your identity intact, to hold on to what defined you even in the most vulnerable state of rest. The fabric hugged your skin like a tether, binding you to your history and your community, even when your mind drifted into dreams. It was also a matter of preparedness. Nights were often broken by sudden dangers, fires flaring in the hearth, sickness striking without warning, or intruders lurking just beyond the flickering light. Being dressed meant you could spring into action without delay, defend your family and your home, with no time wasted fumbling for garments in the dark. In this life, readiness was survival. But the price of this constant vigilance was high. Your clothes were itchy and coarse, soaked through with sweat and smoke, often stained with dirt and the marks of daily toil. The garments sometimes harbored lice and fleas, tiny creatures that gnawed at your skin and tested your endurance. The discomfort was unrelenting, a dull, nagging presence that reminded you of your place in the harsh hierarchy of the world. Yet, even with the itching and the grime, the alternative was far worse. To undress meant exposure, to cold, vulnerability, and shame. In a world where dignity was a fragile thing, your clothes were your armor, your identity, and your refuge all at once. So you pull your cloak tighter around your shoulders, settling back into the worn embrace of your garments. They may be rough and ragged, but they are yours. Each thread holds a story, each patch a memory. You wear them day and night, through work and rest, through hardship and hope. They are more than clothes. They are the fabric of your life. You recall the methods peasants used to manage this discomfort. Washing clothes was rare and difficult, requiring a day's work fetching water, scrubbing with ash or urine, and drying in the unpredictable weather. Herbs and smoke were used to mask odors and repel pests. Mending was an ongoing task, with every patch and stitch a mark of survival. Even when the village had access to communal bathhouses or rivers, modesty and practicality often kept peasants clothed more than they might wish. And the idea of sleeping naked, as some nobles reportedly did, was an alien luxury beyond most peasants' imagination. As you lie back, the familiar weight of your clothes pressing down comfortingly, you think about the layers, not just of fabric, but of life itself. The layers of hardship, community, belief, and resilience woven together in every thread. You are wrapped in history as much as in wool. The fire's glow fades low, and the village settles into a fragile silence. Outside, the cold wind whispers through the trees, but inside, your clothes hold you steady, grounded, and ready. And so, you drift once more into sleep, not just clothed in fabric, but cloaked in the enduring spirit of your people. Chapter 13. Morning light filters weakly through the chinks in your cottage walls as the world stirs awake around you. The sun's pale rays struggle to pierce the heavy shadows, painting thin stripes of gold across the worn wooden floorboards. You lie motionless for a few precious moments, the coarse fabric of your tunic brushing against your skin like a familiar companion. Your bones ache, a dull, insistent throb reminding you of the nights spent on straw that has long since flattened into an unforgiving mat. Yet you are wrapped in your protective layers, and that counts for something. You reach down with a stiff hand to tug your worn cloak tighter around your shoulders, pulling it close like a shield against the lingering chill that seeps in even through the thickest wool. The cold here is relentless, creeping through every crack, every draft, invading your humble refuge no matter how many layers you pile on. You take a deep breath, the scent of smoke, earth, and damp cloth filling your nostrils, comforting and familiar in its rawness. Sleeping in your clothes isn't a choice here. It's a necessity born of harsh realities that outsiders rarely glimpse. There is no soft bed waiting beneath feathered covers, no warm bath to wash away the day's grime and fatigue. Your garments serve as your armor, your insulation, your comfort, all rolled into one. They are your first and last defense against the unforgiving elements. Look closely at your tunic. It's a patchwork of history, pieced together from bits of fabric saved and reused over years, mended and remended by your own hands or your mother's. Each stitch tells a story, a tear from working the fields, a rip caught on a thorn bush, a patch sewn over to cover a stain that refused to wash out. The fabric's coarse texture scratches your skin, sometimes catching on a stray bramble or snagging on rough hands, but you wouldn't trade it for the silks or linens of nobility. Those finer clothes belong to another world, a world where nightly baths and fresh garments are the norm, where linen smells of lavender and velvet cushions soften every step. Here, your clothes are your lifeline. But sleeping dressed is about more than just practicality. The communal nature of peasant living means privacy is scarce. Families huddle together for warmth, sharing the limited space inside cramped cottages. The thin walls echo every sound, the creak of settling timber, the soft whimper of a child, the steady rhythm of snoring. Clothing acts as a barrier, preserving modesty, even when bodies are pressed so close together that skin almost touches skin. Undressing isn't just uncomfortable, it's socially awkward, even impossible. Clothes are the last bastion of personal space in a life where space itself is a luxury. And then there's the ever-present threat of fleas and lice. These unwelcome guests burrow into hair and clothing alike, crawling unseen but scratching with maddening persistence. Stripping off your layers would only expose you to their bites more fully. So you endure the itch and discomfort, knowing the alternative, vulnerability to cold, shame, or exposure, is far worse. The constant scratching is a background noise, a nightly companion almost as familiar as the crackling fire. You recall the old wives' tales passed down through generations, stories of villagers who tried washing their clothes more often, only to find that damp fabric led to chills and sickness. The water in the wells was cold, the drying slow in winter's grip, and wet garments clung to the skin like an icy embrace. This belief isn't just superstition, It's echoed in the findings of historians who argue that medieval people prioritized warmth and dryness over cleanliness, especially in colder regions where hypothermia was a real and deadly threat. Your clothing also serves as your ready kit. Should danger strike in the night, fires sparked by an errant ember, thieves prowling the roads, or wild animals drawn by the scent of food, you're already dressed to flee or defend. Peasant cottages, with their timber frames and thatched roofs, are tinderboxes. Fires can erupt suddenly, swallowing whole homes in moments. Being fully clothed saved lives. It meant you could leap to your feet, grab what little you could carry, and rush out into the dark without losing precious seconds fumbling for garments. Beyond the practical, some peasants imbued their clothes with spiritual significance. Garments were thought to carry a part of the wearer's soul, making clothing theft a grievous violation, not merely of property, but of the self. This belief added another layer of care and reverence to how clothes were treated and protected. To lose your cloak was to lose a piece of your spirit. The threads wove not just warmth and modesty, but identity and soul. You gather your cloak around you one last time before stepping out into the chill morning air. Outside, the village is coming alive. The chatter of neighbors, the clatter of hooves on muddy paths, the lowing of cattle stirring in their pens. Another day begins, and when night falls once more, you'll slip back into those same clothes, your trusted armor for the endless cycle of survival and hope. Chapter 14. The faint glow of dawn seeps slowly through the uneven cracks and gaps in the weathered wooden walls, casting slender ribbons of pale light that stretch across the worn, uneven floorboards. The chill of early morning creeps through every fissure, whispering cold secrets that cling stubbornly to the damp earth beneath your feet. You lie beneath your many layers, stirring reluctantly as the cold nudges at any skin not shielded by cloth. Your body protests, the stiffness in your joints a dull ache, the lingering soreness from nights spent on the hard straw mattress pressing into your bones. Yet even with the discomfort, you know that without your thick wool and coarse linen wrapped around you, the cold would be far worse, an unforgiving, biting force that could steal the very warmth from your chest. Your hands move with practiced familiarity, seeking the comforting weight of your heavy wool cloak. Draped across your shoulders like a well-worn shield, you pull it closer, folding the stiff fabric snugly around your arms and torso. The cloak smells of smoke from the hearth, mixed with the earthy musk of fields and sweat, the scent of your life itself. It's a smell you carry with you everywhere, a testament to your place in this world. The wool is rough, sometimes prickly against your skin, but it is your barrier against the relentless cold that so often seeps in through the cracks and seams of your humble home. The routine is as old and unyielding as the land you till. Sleep in your clothes, wake in your clothes, repeat day after day. This cycle is governed not by comfort or luxury, but by necessity, by the unforgiving realities of peasant life, the hardships you endure, the bitter cold, the crawling pests, the ever-present threat of fire or bandits prowling the roads, demand a constant state of readiness, ready to rise, to flee, to defend, or simply to survive. But beneath these urgent practicalities lies a more profound relationship between your body, your clothing, and your identity. Your clothes are far more than mere protection against the elements. They are symbols, badges of belonging and history, woven into the very fabric of your existence. The coarse fibers tell a story, stories of sweat and toil in the fields, of shared meals beside flickering hearth fires, of the countless hands that have mended, patched, and cared for these garments through seasons of plenty and hardship. Each patch sewn onto your tunic carries meaning. Perhaps it's the rough scrap your mother carefully stitched on after you returned with a torn sleeve from thorny bushes. Maybe it's a careful mending your sister made after your younger brother's reckless chase left a jagged hole. These garments are living history, testaments to endurance, to family, to community. They carry memories, whispers of past struggles, celebrations, and everyday moments of survival. You think of the threads that connect you to your family and village. The tunic your mother mended with patient hands, the cloak your father once wore as he worked the land, the shift that has passed through generations like a sacred relic. These pieces of fabric bind your story to the larger tapestry of your community, marking you as part of something enduring and vital. Sleeping clothed fulfills a crucial social role as well. In a world where privacy is scarce, where walls are thin and beds are shared by parents, children, cousins, and even animals, clothing provides a modest barrier. It preserves a semblance of dignity in close quarters, softening the awkwardness of shared spaces, where bodies lie pressed together for warmth. Clothes create boundaries in an environment where space is a luxury few can afford. And then there are the pests. Fleas, lice, and bedbugs. The tiny tormentors that infest hair and clothing alike are constant, unwelcome companions. Their bites itch and burn, scratching at your skin through the fabric. A low-level torment that humbles even the strongest. Your layers offer some defense, a buffer that dulls their bites and slows their advance. The thought of sleeping naked, exposed to their relentless assault, is terrifying. Better the persistent itch beneath your coarse wool than the raw, open flesh that would be their feast without your clothing shield. Historians continue to debate the hygiene practices of medieval peasants. While some argue that full baths were rare and clothes were washed infrequently, others propose that careful spot cleaning, airing, and mending were more common than previously assumed. What is undisputed, however, is that survival needs often outweighed cleanliness. Warmth, dryness, and readiness were paramount. Damp clothes could bring sickness, and exposure during undressed nights could be deadly. Your clothes are also your emergency kit, your first line of defense when disaster strikes. Fires could ignite suddenly, engulfing the thatched roofs and wooden walls of cottages in flame. Thieves could arrive under the cloak of darkness. Illness might strike without warning. Being fully clothed means you can respond instantly, leaping from the straw bedding, grabbing what little you can carry, and rushing into the cold night without hesitation. The memory of neighbors fleeing burning homes, clutching children, and meager possessions haunts the village. Their clothes were the only armor between them and the dark unknown. On a deeper, spiritual level, garments were believed to hold part of the wearer's essence or soul. To lose one's clothes was not just a material loss, but a spiritual wound, a violation of self. This belief imbued every garment with reverence and care. Each cloak, each tunic was more than fabric. It was a vessel of life, identity, and honor. To misplace or have one's clothing stolen was to suffer a loss far greater than mere property. As you finally rise, the familiar weight of your layered garments grounds you in the present and connects you to a lineage of endurance and resilience. Your clothes are your armor, your history, your link to family and community. The rough fabric reminds you of hardship and love, struggle and survival. You step into the pale morning light, the cold air biting at your face, carrying with it the sounds of the village stirring, the clatter of wooden shoes on muddy earth, the low murmur of neighbors greeting the day, the distant calls of animals eager for feeding. With each breath, you carry your story, wrapped tight in the fabric of your clothes, ready to face the long hours ahead. Chapter 15. The world outside is quiet now, save for the occasional rustle of leaves and distant hoot of an owl. Inside your humble cottage, the familiar scents, smoke, earth, worn wool, and the faint, stubborn tang of unwashed linen envelop you like a familiar, if slightly abrasive, embrace. You lie curled beneath the rough-hewn beams, the coarse straw mattress prickling through the folds of your tunic and cloak. You feel the weight of the fabric settling over your body, heavy with days of wear, sweat, and the stories of those who came before you. These clothes are more than protection from cold. They are your armor against a world that has little patience for softness. Sleeping fully clothed is a practice born of necessity, practicality, and deeply embedded cultural habits. Habits shaped by centuries of survival and shaped by a world that offers no respite. You can almost feel the collective memory of countless generations wrapped around your shoulders like your thick woolen cloak. Cold is the first and most relentless adversary you face every night. Stone and wood walls do little to hold warmth. The straw mattress, a mere pile of dried stalks, is thin and prickly. Outside, the winter's bite seeps into the bones of the earth and creeps inside through every gap. Your clothes, though worn and threadbare in places, are the only true barrier. Your thick tunic traps your body heat. The layers beneath it, rough linen shifts, woolen stockings, combine to keep you alive when the cold threatens to steal breath and strength. Removing your clothes, even for a moment, would be inviting frostbite or worse. Yet it's not only the cold that shapes this habit. There is the threat of fire, a constant, ever-present danger in homes lit by open hearths, straw bedding, thatched roofs, wooden beams. Everything is fuel. Fires can start in a heartbeat, sparked by a careless ember or an overzealous flame. The last great fire in a nearby village left families homeless, their belongings lost, and their lives shattered. Survivors spoke of fleeing in panic, grasping whatever clothing they had on. To sleep undressed was to risk waking naked in chaos, vulnerable and unprepared to protect yourself or your loved ones. You remember the soft, panicked cries from that night, and the burning scent of wood and wool, mixed with tears and soot. From that day forward, the importance of staying clothed, ready to run or fight, was carved into your very bones. Then there are the bedfellows you never invited: fleas, lice, and other biting insects. These pests are a constant nuisance, infesting clothing and bedding alike. They bring discomfort, yes, but also disease. You've learned to endure their bites, scratching discreetly when no one is looking. Itching is the price paid for warmth and protection. Washing clothes is a laborious task, one that demands time and resources scarce in your life. Fetching water from distant wells or streams, scrubbing garments with ashes or even stale urine. These are chores for the fortunate. Your family's clothes bear the marks of these challenges. Patches sewn over holes, faded fabric softened by countless washes, and an ever-present scent of earth, sweat, and smoke. To undress at night means risking going without these layers for hours, leaving you chilled and vulnerable. Beyond practicality, there is a spiritual dimension woven into this ritual. Clothes are believed to carry a part of your essence. Some say that garments harbor pieces of the soul, making clothing theft a serious violation not just of property, but of spirit. When your clothes are taken, it's as if a piece of you is lost to the thief. Clothes also symbolize status and identity. Your coarse wool and rough linen mark you as a peasant, a worker tied to the land, humble but proud. Undressing before bed would be to lay bare not just your skin, but your place in the world. Clothes cloak your dignity as much as your body. Living in close quarters with family and animals leaves little room for privacy. Clothes help maintain a barrier of modesty in these cramped spaces, where beds are shared and space is limited. Even the act of undressing could cause embarrassment or discomfort to others. Historians debate the nature of medieval sleep, questioning how much clothing was worn and how often garments were changed. Some suggest segmented sleep, where people would awaken during the night to perform chores or socialize, while others argue for more continuous rest. Regardless, the necessity of sleeping clothed appears constant. This practice is a symbol of peasant endurance and adaptability. It is a ritual passed down through generations, tied to the rhythms of the land and the hardships of survival. It's about more than physical warmth. It's about emotional and spiritual resilience. You remember your grandmother's voice, weathered and soft, recounting how she and her siblings would pile into a single bed, cloaked in their thickest garments, sharing warmth and stories. She spoke of the comfort found in those layers, not just against cold, but against fear. You think of the village's communal life, the shared fields, the shared labors, the shared nights. Clothing connects you all, a fabric web binding your lives. To sleep clothed is to sleep connected. There is a quiet dignity in this shared struggle. Your worn clothes tell of hardships endured and battles won. the bitter cold, the biting pests, the ever-present threats. Yet they also tell of love, family, and community. As the night deepens, your breathing slows and your muscles relax, the weight of your garments grounding you, holding you steady. The world outside may be harsh and unforgiving, but here, wrapped in your clothes, you find a fragile sanctuary. And when dawn breaks again, bringing the promise of work and toil, you will rise still wrapped in these layers, ready to face whatever the day demands. Because in this world, your clothes are more than fabric. They are your armor, your history, your identity, and your refuge. Now dim the lights once more. Let your breath soften and feel yourself sinking deeper into comfort. The night stories have been told, the embers have cooled, and the ancient rhythms pulse softly beneath your skin. Remember, sleep is not just rest. It's a bridge to dreams, a quiet healing, and a gentle gift from the earth itself. Good night, and may your dreams carry you softly until the dawn.